I'm not going to fuck you up, man. I promise. Anyway, welcome back to Road Less Travel, the podcast by Apple Distillery, where we talk to people in the industry who are pushing the boundaries in their given field. And I'm joined today by someone who I actually have a lot of admiration for.
Thanks, man.
Let's not get... I won't get like too deep into it. But he's won the Boothby Drink of the Year last year with his incredible drink, Bad Apple, which is on the menu now at Byrdi. You're, of course, joined by the amazing head bartender at Byrdi, Sam Thornhill. Mate, thanks for joining me this morning.
Thank you, Alan.
What? I love how you're probably one of the most hospitable men that I've ever known. But then sometimes...
Absolutely not.
What do you mean absolutely not?
I try.
You try. Well, you succeed. I mean, your background's fine dining.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So can you walk me through kind of how you've gotten here, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I actually came to hospitality a little bit later.
Yeah.
So as much as I'd say my background's in fine dining, I actually started out in the creative industries. I was a camera operator out of university. So I worked in London for a little bit. I started working with a couple of mates, kind of as like a passion project on the side. Essentially, one of my mates opened a really cool bar, and I needed some work at the time. It's like the classic store. So I was like, can I pick up some casual work whilst I was working with on productions? And started working with them sort of 1 or 2 days a week. Turns out I was just like super inspired by them. A couple of guys up in Sheffield who were doing some cool stuff. So I would work on production, jet across and work a shift in a bar, which seems counterintuitive. It's usually the other way around. But yeah, I started that way and then basically stuck around. I was like hanging around the place, loving it.
Although you're like, I stuck around, man.
Yeah. And then, yeah, from that, started working slowly more and more into hospitality, specifically into like cocktail bartending. And then as my contracts finished in production, I was in a fortunate position really where I was able to, it teed up where I was able to travel a little bit. So after I worked a little bit more in industry, I started to travel. Ended up in Australia, like every other pond. And then, yeah, sort of stumbled into fine dining by chance.
What drew you to cocktail? As opposed to being like drawn to wine, what actually drew you to like cocktail as an idea?
I think it's creative.
Yeah.
Like I think it's probably like one of the main like facets of hospitality where it's kind of like a little bit like a parallel between music, I think. So when you have... What
do you mean?
That's such a pretentious.
No, that's not a pretentious thing at all. It's like, it's an interesting way of looking at it.
I think when you have people, I mean, drawing that parallel, I think you have different bands in the same genre.
Okay.
I kind of listen to those bands to get that expression or that creativity from that.
So in this sense, like different bands in the same genre.
I'm not going to give an...
I want you to break it down for me.
No, I just mean in terms of like cocktail bartending allows people to launch menus and create venues that are like a real sort of extension of them, and it's really creative.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the bars in Australia, you can see it, where it's like people open with a vision or they want to do something. That could be as simple as, I want to do like just sell beers. So I want to be like a tap bar.
Yeah, for sure.
But the guys are really good at that. And they have like so much creativity and passion around it that becomes like an expression of that person.
Yeah, for sure.
I kind of feel like the cocktail, let's say like bar industry, is an extension of that.
Yeah. So do you feel like when you're putting a menu together, you're putting an album together? Is that the parallel?
Getting the band back together.
Yeah, getting the...
It's like me and Luke are getting a bit older, so... Well, yeah. I say Luke's getting a bit older.
Yeah.
But yeah, no...
You're like R.A.M. really, though. Yeah.
I'm not that bald.
Yeah, okay.
No, I feel like when you put a menu out, it's... Yeah, you guys work... Like, everybody works on that menu for quite a long time.
Yeah. And
most of the time, like, we put a shitload of work into it. And then you get that reaction from people, like people experience that menu, and they have that moment, like whether they're in your bar, you know, and you're looking after them, you're shaping that experience. I think there's quite a few parallels between when people listen to music and people go and have an experience. It's the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. And like, then how did your time in fine dining inform what you do here at Byrdi?
I just think it's it was great for me working in fine dining because there's an attention to detail. It's like be pretty unforgiving. Like
How so?
everything has purpose. So like the way that you work is like everything needs to be done for a reason and needs to be done in a way specifically for that reason. That's really good in terms of like development. Obviously, like the other side of that, some people find that kind of suffocating.
Yeah.
But for me, it was really good because I was able to learn things in a different way to what I had done before.
Yeah.
And it gives you like an attention to detail that I don't think you get from any other style of service.
Okay. In what way is it an attention to detail? Like, what are the fine details that maybe someone who's experiencing Byrdi or experiencing fine dining might miss? Like, what are those like little things that consumers might just go like, I didn't even notice that happened. Is that the point? That you don't even notice?
No, I think in terms of, I think in terms of that section of hospitality, it's more of the things you don't see.
What do you mean?
So like all the little service elements, like the little tweaks that are made continuously throughout that like experience. People get trained to do that. Like it's a really extensive training program that's behind that. And I might just be working with somebody who's mentoring you, who whips you to pieces. But it might also be somebody who's like really encouraging around it, and it's like you come in really green and they'll put you through a process that gets you to a level of service that you do those things automatically.
Yeah.
And then once you've learnt those things, you don't unlearn them.
Yeah. So how similar was your experience to the bear? I'm fucking around. I'm genuinely fucking around. But what are the, like, can you think of like a specific example of something which is that quote unquote fine dining training, which, like, let's say you have, Susie from Gladstone sit down. I don't even know if Susie or Gladstone are real things. Big Suze.
Yeah.
She sits down. What are the things which are built into something like the sequence of service that she won't even notice, that elevate that experience from just being like cocktail bar to like fine dining?
I mean, I think there's like two kind of levels to it. So I think people have, like in a restaurant, you have a sequence of service, and then everybody learns that sequence of service. It's kind of where it helps you pace things. So like you can, you'll never have a glass of water empty. You'll never have, like you'll never be waiting for a pairing, or you'll never be waiting for like that sequence to kind of continue. It's always like really seamless. I think that's the taught side of it. The untaught side of it that you get from just being in those environments is like the anticipation, like understanding what people need before they know that they need it. I think that's like I'm not great at that. I tried.
See, no, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. You're being way too humble about this. You're very good at it.
But the guys who are really good at that, and the people who I find like mind-blowing in terms of their service, are the guys who know what you want before you want it.
Yeah. Is there an example of like an experience that you've had recently where you're like, yeah, that was it? Of like people knowing what I wanted before.
I think the guys, like for example, if you go to, there's like, I give two examples that are quite different. If you go to like Vue de Monde, for example, it's like the pinnacle of service in Australia. The guys are like, the whole experience is super seamless, and everything that you think you want in that experience is kind of catered for.
Okay. Yeah.
Just who you're talking. Whereas like different style of service, but you get the same feeling as like, oh my, in Beaconsfield.
100%.
I love the balance of their service there. It's like relaxed fine dining where it's you with your mates.
Yeah.
At the same time, they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you want to explain a wine that you want to drink, and you're like me, has like a limited knowledge of wine, and you can describe what you're looking for in terms of the jakiest adjectives. Speaking of, there's got.
What was that adjective just then? The jakiest? Jankiest? Oh, yeah. Cool. The jakiest?
Yeah.
Oh, true.
But they'll find that moment for you, and they'll find that thing that you're looking for.
Yeah, it's like accessible fine dining in a way.
Yeah.
That like invites you in.
But yeah, I think what I do now is very different to fine dining. Like it was good for me. I had like a good spell in fine dining, but that style of service trains you really well and gives you like a good approach to things. But it's not necessarily, you don't carry every single thing forward into a bar. Like I don't say that Byrdi's like the equivalent of a fine dining restaurant. It's anything but.
But it has elements on it.
Yeah.
But they're like skillfully, I think they're skillfully kind of settled into a really relaxed form of service that speaks to the menu and to the produce on the menu.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that I guess I would say the main thing that carries through is like the idea of accommodate like hosting fee.
Yeah.
So we're obviously all table service. They can put you in that almost restaurant setting straight away. And the sequence of service is similar to a restaurant. But that's all built around making people feel comfortable. And I think having like a relaxed style of service, style of drink and style of offering that we have, super important. Yeah, like it's, if people want to come through and have that experience where things are explained really extensively, yeah, I expect the guys to know how to do that. And I hope that they can do that. But at the same time, if you want to come in and crush beers,
and then you can come in and crush beers.
And you don't want to talk to me.
Yeah.
I would hope that we can do that as well.
Yeah, well, you absolutely can. We can come in here and crush beers. I know that firsthand.
Thanks for the plug, mate.
You're welcome. But speaking of the offering that you just talked about, the offering at Byrdi is, in my mind, fundamentally different. And of course, I'm super biased because not only have I joined you behind the bar haphazardly.
Oh, yeah.
Haphazard.
Talk to me about that.
Let's not talk about
How was that?
I mean, the fact that my nickname was Lone Star Ranger based on a 1-star Google review, I think speaks volumes. So I don't think we need to go there. But the offering of Byrdi is fundamentally different to a cocktail bar in its traditional sense. Like if you went to, Satan's Whiskers in the UK where they have a rotating list of classic cocktails, it's all about paying homage to kind of cocktail culture specifically. Whereas you guys approach it almost like a restaurant approaches how to put a menu together, or in your case, how to put an album together. You're going to hate that one. You're going to hate that. Hate that you even brought it up.
Yeah.
So what is the process creatively, first and foremost? And then secondly, what's the process behind how you take those creative ideas and then present them to a customer in a way that is, present them to a guest in a way that is consumable, both literally and figuratively?
Yeah. The main thing for Byrdi is it's all based around time and place. So each menu is usually dictated by the produce. The idea that you can only experience that menu at that one time at Byrdi. So obviously the menu features quite a lot of sort of preservation. So we ferment heavily throughout the menus, and that's a way for us to kind of extend produce outside the traditional season. But it's all governed by like a small network of producers that we work with. So you come and tell us what's coming into season in, say, 3 months, 6 months' time.
Yeah.
And we build the drinks around those flavour profiles. We've changed a little bit over the course of almost 3 years that I've been here, in the sense that each season we have quite a conceptual menu. So we work on those around 6 months in advance. So we'll lock in the concept for the menu.
Yeah.
And then we'll build the drinks out from that network of producers and collaborators again.
And you'll lock that in 6 months out.
The concept, yeah.
The concept.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're speaking to producers and figuring out what's going on in terms of what's seasonal.
Yeah.
How do you decide on who you work with in terms of producers? That seems like a really strange thing that a bar should do. I don't know.
I don't know if it is strange.
Okay, well, why do you say that you don't know if it's strange then?
So I think every bar should be careful about the producers that they use.
Why?
Because, for me, the idea of like this, I've been having quite a few conversations recently about sustainability and...
which is something we have conversations about all the freaking time.
About locality.
Yeah.
Like about how having like a local focus. For us, it's like it's expected, really. We're in Victoria. We're an Australian bar. You would hope that you'd be using produce from Australia, a local sort of network of producers.
Yeah.
But in terms of like how we select producers, it's usually based around kind of people that we admire.
Okay.
So doing interesting things and doing things kind of in the right way. We don't really work with like massive commercial farms. We use like really small producers who we know. If we don't know them to start with, we usually get introduced to them and get to know them. You can kind of go and see firsthand how they put that produce together. And it means that we have like a connection to the produce that we're using rather than just being like, okay, well, lemons come every day.
Yeah, for sure.
They don't for us. They come in winter. And the citrus farmers that we work with. It's the same with produce throughout summer. Like we pivot to a lot of fresh produce in the summer, obviously. It's a lot warmer. And the idea behind that is the produce that we get in, we're not just buying from anybody.
Yeah.
Like we sit down, we identify the producers that we want to work with or who have like good synergy with the bar.
Mm-hmm.
Then we'll go and meet them, go and see how they work. And like they get to know us as well.
Yeah.
And then we have a relationship going forward.
What do you look for in a producer in that way? You said people who work in the right way, which I completely agree with. But what does that actually mean? To you in big as
I mean,
it's big.
My perception is right.
One of my passions.
Different from somebody else's perception, right?
Yeah,
like we look at people who are like a good example is like Timbara Farm.
Yeah.
So we work with Chris and Helen quite a lot. We've been out to see them quite a lot just to get to understand and like see how they actually go about cultivating that produce. They work with biodynamic principles and they farm in pretty regenerative way.
Yeah.
It's just like a respect for the land. That's really difficult when you get into like big commercial
For sure.
producers, but for the amount of volume that we do, we're able to be a little bit more selective about the farms that we work with. And yeah, it's just going to see how other people work with it.
Cool.
I think there's like a real move towards a shift towards like a local focus. So you see a lot like drinks and spirits brands this year, Crosta and like competitions and things. They're all like sort of shifting towards encouraging a focus on local. I think that's really important. They support producers in your community rather than say from WA, if we're in Victoria, or from New South Wales,
Or from South Australia. Yeah.
South Australia.
Oh no.
Shit, like.
Yeah, it's shit. It's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing for me. It's like it's actually trying to like build a community around your venue.
Yeah, for sure.
Where you support each other. They like, again, using an example like Chris and Helen, they come to us with produce that they think is exciting. They know that we think will be exciting, and we're able to sort of build a relationship where we help each other.
In terms of other bars, because there's a whole host of great bars in Australia who don't have your outlook in terms of utilising ingredients that are local or using spirits that are made in Australia. What is your read on why that is? And if you were, king for a day, would you make everyone adopt your ideas behind bars? Or no, okay, yeah.
No, I'm not a dick.
Yeah.
I can be opinionated sometimes, but
No, I appreciate that.
I don't know those venues. I don't know their operations. I don't know what works for them. I completely understand that. We chose to have this focus because we think it's important to us and it's important to Byrdi as like what we want to be.
Yeah.
But that's not the same for other bars. If your focus is more global, and say for example you're like a hotel bar or you want to work with agave spirits, that sector's really limited in Australia.
Yeah.
So if people want to have like a menu that's full of Italian citrus fruit, it's not grown in Australia, then inevitably they're going to look international. But I just think it's I think it's a positive thing to where you can focus as much as you can on the community that you operate in.
Yeah, to support it and to make sure that it's healthy.
Just to celebrate it. There's awesome things happening produce-wise across Victoria at the moment. So we use our menus to shout about that.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think it's something that people are leaning towards. I do think the vast majority of bars now have lent towards like a local focus.
Yeah.
It's becoming like less and less of a thing that you can say as like a
point of difference and a piece of marketing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of bars that use it as a piece of marketing or like a point of difference that maybe don't have like a local focus.
Okay. What do you mean?
So I think like when people say that they're like a celebration of Australia, and then their back bar is like a mix of international and domestic spirits, or even like when they say they have a local focus and it's coming from all over the place in terms of like what they have, or like they have. Yeah, I think it's usually in spirits. Look at a shitload of AMRs on those. It's not really a local focus.
Yeah.
You're just a bar that's using local produce.
Yeah. And then Kettle One.
Kettle One.
yeah, for sure. But it's a strange sense of hypocrisy. And I feel the same. Like a lot of the time I'll walk into great bars who are like, yeah, we celebrate Australia or Australian culture, or we really want to, push Australian flavors, and then it'll be like a Negroni using Tanqueray, Campari, and Cinzano and strawberry gum, and like that's it's tokenistic in a way.
Yeah, but I think again it's like one of those things where I would say it's a little bit tokenistic, but by the same token, if that's what that bar needs to do, to operate and like to operate well, and I just think it's more about the language used around those bars. Not really by the bars, to be honest.
Yeah, okay.
It's more the language used around those bars by other people that I find frustrating.
Okay.
Where people will write press around those bars as being like a fully Australian bar, like a celebration of Australia. Or this, not necessarily a celebration of Australia, or just being like a bar that focuses on sort of local producers. But it's not.
Yeah.
But those bars, a lot of the time, they won't actually say, like, oh yeah, but
they won't say it themselves.
Yeah,
it's really about the press. Yeah, okay.
I just find it a little bit challenging.
Yeah.
Like there's a thing with, specifically with World Class this year. I got a couple of friends, a couple of colleagues who've entered, and there's like one of the takeaways from the first round, which is, I think, the biggest one. Was that like there's a real shift away from a native Australian produce.
Ew.
I thought like for me that's like super alarming, or like it's super concerning.
Yeah.
Because these are all bartenders operating in Australia. Yeah. So you'd think that like for the Australian World Class, or like bar like the biggest competition in Australia, you would hope that it'd be the opposite. Like people are really trying to celebrate Australian produce.
What's your read on why, on the reason why bartenders would move away from native Australian ingredients? Do you think it's like fatigue? Do you think it's like, oh, well, we've already done this before, and there's not really a sense of like, well, it's world class, not Australia class, and I mean, other people haven't seen strawberry gum before, even though that's like distillers ketchup nowadays to a certain extent. I mean, it is. I understand that.
Yeah.
But like, if someone was to use like native tamarind or bunya nut or something that's maybe a little bit off the beaten track, they'd be re-energized by it.
No, I just think it's. Yeah, I don't really know. I think sometimes it comes down to things like cost.
Yep.
Like if you want to use, say, like native Australian produce, it's more expensive than using like commercially grown produce.
For sure.
And it's harder to navigate. I think that's one thing. But the other side of it is if those bartenders don't have that local focus, then why would they?
Yeah, for sure.
If it's not high on that priority, it's not something that gets sort of shouted about as important. I mean, it's an interesting, I think, sector in terms of how people interact with native produce.
Yeah.
Like, we're really careful about it because we use predominantly naturalized produce rather than endemic. Because obviously conversations around like ownership that make it quite tricky, especially if you're not Australian, or if you're not actually Indigenous. It's really difficult in terms of like navigating that space. I think it takes quite a lot of thought and process around doing that in the right way.
Yeah.
So I think people can turn off from it.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you're in a bar that doesn't focus on Australian produce, then you're obviously going to shift away.
Do you think that's because it's more easy to digest? It's more articulated in terms of like, if you're not focusing on Australian culture, which can be a little bit of a minefield sometimes.
Yeah.
It's easier to focus on Italian culture because it's kind of less of a minefield gustatorially.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'd use the example like ferments in Australia is quite an interesting one as well. Like, if you took inspiration from like an old, centuries old traditional style of fermentation, Italy.
Yeah.
No problem. Like, no issues at all.
Yeah.
But
But if you took
if you
a
took,
centuries old,
if you took like a centuries old indigenous ferment, and just ran with that, like as a young bartender, like it's super tricky.
yeah,
Specifically if you're not from it.
yeah, 100%.
Like there's like there is like an element around that that's not the same for say for European styles of fermentation.
Yeah,
I consciously think of that often. I have to like assess what we're doing. If we're doing it in the right way, like we've used certain produce before where I've been like, I've supplied, for example, like yucca. We did a drink with yucca.
Yeah, yucca resin. Yeah.
And yeah, when we were first looking at using that, I was like, okay, well, if we're going to use it, I was actually on a trip in South Australia, and somebody was burning yucca resin in a shop there, and I was like, smell was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I was asking about it. It was a white Australian dude, and he was telling me about it, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to use that. But again, it's like something that I was like, okay, well, if I want to use that, then I need to source it ethically, and make sure that like I'm actually financially contributing 100% of that purchase to like the original source, or to a producer that has ownership of that produce. So it took ages for us to work through that, to be in a position where we're comfortable to be able to use that produce on our menu.
Yeah.
It's a tricky space.
It's a real tricky space.
You guys use a lot of that.
Yeah, we certainly do. Yeah. But you know, it's troubling. It's a troubling space in many ways. So the last piece of data that we got about Indigenous ownership within the farming of endemic species or native Australian ingredients was 3% of farmers who are engaging in that produce are Indigenous, which I'm not sure as to the reasons why that is. I don't actually know. I'm searching for answers on that too. But we've also heard really troubling reports of, you know, amateur foraging, pilfering wattle seed, because the prices on native Australian ingredients incentivize it to be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And we've seen that for the past, 50 to 30 years within Australian agriculture, from kakadu plum to lemon myrtle to kangaroo apple, not only because of their dining applications, but also because of their cosmetic applications as well, because they're so high in nutrient. So it's a really strange space to work in, but it's all about transparency and accountability and just trying to do stuff better and trying to learn as well. I think that's kind of what it comes down to. But that can be difficult in a bar setting or a restaurant setting where it's like, we just want to serve this. We don't want to have to do the kind of the research, because that takes time. It takes time and effort. And maybe you don't have that. Maybe you're just trying to get customers through the door.
Yeah, I completely get it. We work with foragers who do that for us in a way.
Yeah.
And we're comfortable with like how they work. And the sort of level of research and that they've put into like how they source ingredients. We go direct with other produce. I used to work for a foraging restaurant, so I completely get that.
Yeah.
Like, that menu was about 85% forage. The fuck were they sustainably foraging that?
Yeah. It's a tough space, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you have like a restaurant with 70 covers and you're doing 2 seedings, and that's your menu structure,
there's no way
outside of the business practices that business had anyway. Like it's very difficult to find that volume, sustainably, and I found that really troubling when I was in that event.
For sure.
But I think there's like over the last sort of few years been like a real shift towards understanding how to go around that. How to be better at being more conscious of it.
Yeah, I love so. Now, you brought up fermentation before. Well, fermentation forms a real core part of Byrdi's menu, Byrdi's practices, in terms of how you guys go about it, because we see ferments all over the place at a whole bunch of bars, a whole bunch of restaurants. We had a guest on who was actually saying that there's too many ferments going on, there's too much of it going on because people aren't actually learning how to do it. Like, how do you guys go about assuring that all of your ferments are healthy or are good? Like, how do you guys go about that?
Oh, we measure everything.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's some elements of, I think, it's kind of like, I don't know, I feel like there's a group of, or like a school of thought around certain bartenders that think the ferments are wank.
Okay, really?
Yeah, like...
what do you mean?
Well, a lot of people talk about it who think like, when they think of ferments, they think of, like, shitload of acids.
Yeah.
Like, mousy, horrible...
Yeah.
Sort of faux wines.
Yeah.
Or, like, lacto-fermented everything.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, there's, like, a point where it's kind of exploded.
Yeah.
In terms of, like, in every bar, or, like, every bar community, there's usually, like, fermentation across it. The way that we kind of ensure and work around is we record everything, we test everything all the time. We have certain parameters that we work with on the ferments. And then we're obviously fortunate we're surrounded, like, within our team, we have a lot of experience in terms of fermentation. So there's people who can kind of troubleshoot ferments as we go through them. But we're also really careful about it. So at the end of it, it's, you know, if there's any doubt, throw it out.
If there's any doubt, throw it out.
That's just sound bad.
Should I get that on a t-shirt?
Yeah.
I feel like it should. Yeah.
There's a lot of doubt.
Yeah. There are many doubts.
But yeah, I think the main thing around it is that fermentation is an amazing tool to create, like, a really unique offering for your bar. Like, provides, like, a heap of different opportunities to extract flavors that nobody else is to extract.
Yeah. How do you go about deciding, like, I'm going to ferment that? Because I think a lot of bartenders, like, see pears, for example, and they go, like, yeah, I'm just going to ferment this, and maybe that's not what they should be doing. Like, how do you identify when produce is ready to be fermented in your creative way? I'm just curious.
I mean, a lot of produce has wild yeast.
Yep.
So we only ferment with wild yeast.
Okay.
There's one or two ferments where we introduce specific yeast strains.
Yeah.
But in the main, like, we do a lot of wild fermentation, and produce and, like, how you select produce is often based around that.
Yeah.
It's also based around the flavor profile. As that produce, like, certain things lacto really well. And I think a lot of bartenders, like myself included, it's a really good way of reducing your waste. So if you have produce where you have elements of that produce left over, fermentation is, like, a really good way of utilising that produce. And that's something that I think gets referenced in the guys who talk smack about fermentation.
Yeah, okay.
I see, like, the skins of this fermented, or, like, everything's lacto-fermented, 'cause at the end of the day you can chuck it in a bag of some salt.
Yeah.
And hope for the best. I think that does happen quite a lot. I'd like to think that we're a little bit more careful about the fermentation that we use.
Yeah.
We specifically use different styles of fermentation based on the flavour profiles that are produced.
Yeah.
In terms of, like, how we profile produce, I would say most of the time when we're fermenting, say, for example, the apple, the different styles of fermentation in that drink are based on the result of that fermentation.
Yeah, okay.
So, for example, we do ferment skins.
Yeah.
You know, but we ferment them into, like, an apple skin wine. It's going to bring, like, tannin, like, a bit of structure to the drink. It's also going to lengthen that out.
Yeah.
So we then use, like, every other part of the apple and different styles of fermentation, like, within that drink. But it's not just throwing fermented elements together and hoping for that. It's more, each of those ingredients contribute something for a specific purpose, I guess.
Yeah, and you're trying to be very selective about why you do what you do and why you process your ingredients in a particular way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the best thing that fermentation does, it gives you, like, a really unique sort of inventory of ingredients. So I guess the difference for us is that rather than focusing on, okay, I want to use this ingredient in that drink.
Yeah.
It's more based around using that produce to create, like, a range of different ingredients that we could use across multiple drinks.
Yeah, for sure.
So once you introduce fermentation into your bar program, you start creating elements that provide different tastes.
Yeah. You essentially start building like a fermentable pantry.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you do in many ways.
Yeah, our guys work on that all the time.
Yeah.
So we have quite a tight menu.
Yeah.
It's quite a small menu in terms of like the seasonal offering anyway.
Mm.
So we spend a lot of time working on that pantry.
Yeah, sick. Now I want to ask you about two parts of that pantry that I know about, which I consider to be like the Rick Rubin parts of the pantry. So we're going with the music. We're going with the music analogy, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah.
The first one is you've been working with mould, and in Bad Apple, you worked with mould quite a lot, which sounds fucked in many ways, shapes, and forms.
Yeah.
But yielded an insane result. First of all, where did you get the inspiration to work with fucking mould? And then second of all, I remember like fucking 18 months ago seeing you work on that drink and work on that particular garnish with like a styrofoam box. Like, how did you go from...
That was shit, wasn't it?
No, I thought it was cool. I was into it. I just had no idea what you were doing. And when you told me like, hey man, I'm working on making a mouldy apple that you can eat, I was like, I think you're insane, but that's fine. I trust you, but you're insane.
Yeah, that was, I mean, I say like a mould element. Mouldy boy.
I know. It's the same thing that you would do with like cheese. Like blue cheese is mould, but it's good mould.
But for that drink is really based around less about like mould and more about the style of fermentation, the result out of that.
Yeah.
So the inspiration for that drink came from Margaret's. They did a lot of work on like Botrytis. And they used to serve. They basically pivoted the whole menu.
Yeah.
And started working like exclusively with malt. Obviously, like the inspiration for anything that we do is like kind of informed.
How did they work exclusively with malt? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
So it's like all of their menu
was mouldy.
Yeah,
that's wild. That's what.
So they served at one stage. They served like the dish was like a rotten pear. They used like a type of spore that basically, as it fermented, created similar sort of process to Botrytis.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea behind the drink was that we'd work with the guys at Finn, so up in Dixon's Creek. At least they obviously make cider as well. But Ollie's dad has got a massive orchard. Or had a massive orchard. I was taking it over now. But I basically went up to see them, and they weren't making that much cider that year. So all the apples had fallen from the tree.
Yeah.
And there was just like decomposing apples everywhere. And you'd think it would smell like shit.
Yeah.
It didn't actually smell like, almost like cooked apple.
Yeah.
And I was kind of, well, I was like, shit, it smells amazing. And then I was basically fanboying Margaret's and looking to like some of the stuff that they were doing, and I was like, actually I really like the idea of like finding out what's happening with the apple. And what's happening basically is in that wild environment, there's obviously like a shitload of bad bacteria.
Yeah.
Super dangerous, like really harmful if you eat about fruit.
Yeah.
It'll make you really sick.
Yeah.
There are like certain spores that are working in there that as they ferment through, they basically generate their own heat.
Right.
So they're able to essentially cooking the produce. But as it ferments through, as it rots, there's like an element that's creating like a similar sort of reaction to like cooking tree. So we kind of look, 15 years old.
Yeah.
We kind of looked at if we could recreate that reaction, but in a controlled environment, a very specific strain.
Yeah.
We could sort of replicate that experience, like that reaction. So we were able to ferment apples with this particular spore that generates its own heat. If you get them to permeate into the apple far enough, then basically it'll cook the apple from the inside out. So you still retain that like texture of like a fresh apple. You'll get the flavour of the cooked apple.
Yeah, I ate it the other day, and it was probably one of the most wild experiences I've ever had.
It takes a bit of like cajoling people into eating.
Really? Really?
Yeah, some people like you go straight in for it. But
Yeah.
Otherwise, it looks like a mouldy apple.
I mean, it does. Yeah, it looks like basically a white tennis ball.
Yeah, little pom pom.
Yeah, look. But it is genuinely the most. I don't know of anyone else who's looked at a field of moldy apples and thought, delicious.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, like, what is that's fucking wild, dude. Are you gonna repeat processes like that again based on that experience, or are you gonna let the produce inform you and then do it?
yeah. I mean, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've done similar stuff before. It's just the way we went about it this time was specific to like the garnish.
Yeah.
And the main thing with that is like it's all well and good having that process and being like, okay, we're gonna have one drink on the menu that's like quite technical. That has like that was the concept for the whole menu.
Yeah.
So all the other drinks corresponded to that drink.
Yeah. Wow.
Like a shitload of work went into it, but at the end of the day, if like people look at it and it looks like a mouldy apple and it's like disgusting, nobody's gonna eat it.
Yeah,
Nobody's
for sure.
gonna drink it. So the reason why we spent so much time on that was because it needed to be like aesthetically inviting to eat. Like nobody wants to eat something that's discolored
Yeah.
or that looks dodgy. You know, like everybody's kind of conditioned to be like, that looks bad, don't eat that.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think the main time that I spent on that was getting aesthetically into a position where if I said you have to trust me,
Yeah.
the people would be like, okay,
Yeah. You could garnet.
if
Yeah.
it's cute, rather than being like, that looks fucking disgusting.
Yeah, for sure. Did the first couple trials look fun? Like
fuck,
that?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Horrendous. Yeah. I ate so many bad apples. It's like insane.
Oh, jeez.
But yeah, it took ages. To be honest, it's one of those things that I got to a point where I was like, one of the things that Luke's really good at,
Yeah.
that having around is really, really good for, is that when something's not working,
Yeah.
they'll just put a pin in it.
Yeah.
Just be like, I'm going to revisit it in 6 months' time.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm like, it's not right now. And I got to a point where I was like pretty happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah, probably get close to it. And then it wasn't where I wanted it to be. So I was like, okay, I'm actually going to leave it.
Yeah.
And we'll revisit it. And like over the next 6 months, we'll look at it again. Because the concept for that drink was, and that menu was, like, I loved it.
Yeah.
But I just didn't, it needed to be right. So when I revisited, I was like, right, new ideas, go through that process again. Did that for a while. Didn't really get the right results out of it. Got to a point where I was like, I'll do it one more time, and then fuck this, I'm out.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yeah.
And I literally said to Luke, I was like, I'm going to run it one more time, and then it's job out.
Say la vie. Yeah.
And when I came back to it, they were perfect. So, yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's like, if it can be like super conceptual, but if at the end the result isn't that somebody wants to drink that drink or like finds it fun and engaging,
Yeah. That hasn't really achieved its purpose.
yeah, what are you doing it for?
Yeah. Well, you're doing it for your own ego, and you're doing it for yourself. But the second ingredient that for me is fucking wild that you guys made was tomato honey, because a lot of people you did that in a rotovap, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of bars now have rotovaps, but this seemed like for me a completely counterintuitive way of using it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't.
Well, you're like, yeah.
No, I mean, I don't think we were the. I think people have done reductions in rotovap's
Oh, for sure.
like for ages. I mean, but yeah, I think it's something that it's super straightforward to understand in terms of like the result out of it.
Yeah.
Bit process heavy.
Okay.
So
So.
like it takes a long time to make, and you yield off. The produce isn't great, so like the actual end result needs to be like super intense.
Yeah.
So you can use it in really small quantities.
Yeah.
Yeah, the distilled honeys was a way for us to kind of create, I guess, honeys that weren't honeys.
Yeah.
But
But you're essentially enacting the same process as a hive would on a liquid with present sugar.
I don't want to say.
I don't. No.
It's essentially removing the water content.
Yeah.
From clarified juices.
Yeah.
The
Wow.
easiest way to explain it, but it's a really simple process in terms of what's happening. Like you basically clarify, or we clarify juices of fruits and vegetables, and then we do take basically through freezing. We remove about half the volume.
Yeah.
And then we distill out the remaining water content until it becomes like a honey.
Yeah. Wow.
So that reduction is happening. It's almost like caramelizing. It's obviously on the temperature. So you end up with like a really intense honey that's not honey, but it's not. The way that we phrase it, we call it like a peach honey, and it's essentially a reduction.
Yeah. Wow.
It's in the flask.
Yeah. That's fine.
It takes ages.
Yeah. It takes ages. Is it super inconvenient?
Oh,
Yeah. Is it your least favorite ingredient to make?
no.
What is your least favorite thing?
To be honest, in the moment, we've got a drink on the menu for autumn that's called Autumn Leaves.
Yeah.
It's got a beetroot twirl that's perfectly shaped like a leaf.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's yeah. Is that just because they're delicate?
Yeah, it's just a really long process, and I've got like gorilla fingers sometimes.
Yes.
And I have to pay.
Gorilla fingers. They're really,
Actually, yeah. As in, like, see, it's the same as making twirls in a restaurant. It's not.
Yeah.
I think it's just my interaction with that that task is like.
Is all
You basically have to like dehydrate. You make like a puree. Dehydrate that.
Yeah.
In molds.
Yeah.
Take those molds off. Carefully peel them off.
Yeah. Carefully.
Fry those and then individually shape each leaf.
Yeah. Wow.
One at a time.
Okay. Just you telling me about that makes me not want to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's for the end result's really good, but that's probably my least favorite.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Thanks for answering. Honestly, I appreciate it. Yeah. There's been a few. I know there's been a few that are absolute ball eights. In terms of your work with Byrdi, you guys are rated in the top 100 in the world. In terms of top 100 cocktail bars, you get to travel quite a lot for work, or at least travel a little. Why are you giving me that face?
Big old plug coming.
There's no big old plug coming. No. There will be a shameless plug, but I'm going to leave it right for the end. You get to travel a lot for work. What for you out of traveling is the most inspiring thing that you bring back to menus? Is it going to other people and seeing other people and engaging in the hospitality community or in the restaurant community? Or is it the physical experience of being in a place and having a connection to land? Like, what about traveling for you is the most inspiring?
I think a bit of both.
Okay.
Like I think people I find I get in. I mean, the only way to really like develop, I think personally, is to experience more things.
Yeah.
Like experience different venues, experience different offerings. Like you only really get that. Like we get stuck in a bubble in Australia quite a bit. I'm super guilty of it. I think you spend half the year in the same place.
Yeah.
You get wrapped up in your own little world.
Yeah, for sure.
It's become like really affording, and the way that things are done, you're like, you having this, or like these guys are absolutely amazing. And you go to a completely different community, and it's like, there's people doing other stuff. You pick and choose like bits that you like. Oh, shit, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And you go and talk to those people, and you'd be like, how are you doing this? Or like, what? Have the same conversations that we had.
Yeah, for sure.
And that kind of gives you a huge inspiration coming back. It's other things where like you get real validation. And sometimes you can feel, I think if I sometimes find it where I feel like there's trends in the bar industry, like if you're doing something a little bit different, whether you want to see if it's really valued.
Yeah, sure.
When you go and see other people who like think in the same, or like give you that encouragement. I think that's like really important.
Yeah.
The same thing with like being in a different place. Like I was talking to the caretakers guys about they just did a trip to Mexico.
Yeah.
And like cuisine in Mexico, like mind blowing, right? Like nowhere else really. And they've come back like super jazzed about that and like really inspired by it, and like talking to Rob about it. He's saying like it blew his mind. And I think you get those experiences from being in different places.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you remember like the first time you went to Asia, or to like say Southeast Asia, or if you've ever been to Japan,
Yes.
it's like that experience of being. You come back and you're like, holy shit! Like I'm so
My world has been rocked. Yeah.
And you bring the good things back, and the things
Leave the bad things behind.
But you bring like the good things that you took away from that trip back, like those inspirations, and you come back and you apply it to the location you're at.
Is Japan your most inspiring place at the moment? Like,
I think I mean, I haven't been to Japan.
Oh, okay.
I'm supposedly going this year.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, that's gonna be sick.
So that's been like a big bucket list.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I think in terms of Brazil, I find that like massively inspiring.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's like one of the few cuisines in the world as well where it's like really authentically individual.
Dude.
Like, because there's fermentation across like every facet of that country.
Ooh.
That experience is so like tied into the location.
Yeah.
And being in that place. Like it's completely different to say if you had the cuisine in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's the same with a lot of places. I think that's what I find super inspiring about the place.
And is that what you're trying to recreate here to a certain extent? Giving people that sense of time and place?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us it's just about tasting, like being in Victoria. Being in Melbourne in a specific time.
Yeah.
The idea from menu to menu is that, like, if you come back in autumn 2025, should be a different experience to autumn 2024.
Yeah, for sure.
That's like the most important. I think the best bars in the world do that. Like they create moments. Like if you ask people, oh, what's your favorite bar in the world? They're like, what's your favorite bar experience? Most of the time it might be based around like a moment where there's with company. It might be based around like just the vibe of the place that they walked into and they're like super excited, like blown away by it. But it might be like a dish that they had in the restaurant that might be that like really changes their perception of that, and that's the thing that becomes memorable. But it's like about creating that moment in time.
Yeah, for sure. What is next in terms of menus, creative outlets, and what have you been inspired by recently that you're going to be bringing to the next menu? Do I get like I know you just dropped a menu. No, fuck off. No, fuck.
Actually.
Get fucked. You've been...
It's not me every day.
What? I can't even get through this. What are the things that are up and coming that you've been inspired by that you're bringing to the next menu? I mean, obviously, since you're talking about, a 6-month lead time before you drop a menu, you just dropped Chroma, which is the most recent menu here. But what are you looking at for the next menu already that you're finding really exciting or inspiring? If you're allowed to tell me.
Yeah. I mean, I won't say what the concept for the next menu is, but people have been super inspiring. Yeah, so, like Luke and I have both travelled quite a bit over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
Taking like heaps of inspiration from what people are doing, but also from people themselves. Yeah. Certain people's energy and like their approach has been super inspiring. So the next 6 months, let's say it's like 6 to 12 months. Hoping to celebrate that a little bit. Yeah. Obviously, we turn 5 years old.
Yeah, wow.
This year. Yeah.
Do you have big plans for the 5th birthday?
Yeah.
You can't tell me though, can you?
Not yet.
Yeah, okay.
We're having our birthday this year, so quite a bit of celebration around that. I think it's a massive achievement for bars that have gone through COVID. Yeah. We don't feel like an old bar. We've been around for a while. Like 5 years in hospital is quite a long time. Especially going through 2 years of shit-house lockdowns.
Yeah, sure.
And like a really tricky spell for, I'd say probably 3 years of that period. It's like a really difficult market to operate in. Especially as like a family-owned business. Like we're really small. Yeah. Like a really small team. And getting to that milestone for us is actually like big achievement, I think.
Yeah, it's massive. And you can do something big for it. Yeah. Here.
Oh, big old.
Here at Byrdi, a big old party. Well, sign me up.
I hope so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, 100%. Could fast forward a few months, it could be in another lockdown.
Yeah, true. Well, now it's going to be your favourite time because now it is time for a shameless plug. Because if you are not if you are not in Melbourne and you want to experience Byrdi, we are taking Byrdi on an Oceania tour. It's an Oceania tour. Yeah. So we are... So it's an Oceania tour with Byrdi. We are going to be hitting Sydney. We're going to be hitting Perth. Adelaide is coming up the soonest.
Yeah.
So that's in May. It's going to be May 15th at Maybe May with the Byrdi team, which is going to be incredible. And then we are heading to New Zealand and Tasmania as well. So New Zealand and Hobart. I do believe it's going to be Auckland. Please follow, like, and subscribe for dates. We're going to be updating you consistently. And you can also find a whole bunch of great collaboration gins that we've done for each season too. You're hating this moment.
Oh,
It's it's got to be.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm very excited too. What are you most excited about? And if you say anything bad here, I will mincemeat you.
So far, it's all.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. I won't get into that story right now because it's too much. But man, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, mate.
That's it.